When I started this channel, I created a list of my favorite volleyball creators, personalities that I wanted to talk to and just pick their brain on their perspective on the sport. And at the top of that list was someone who, in my opinion, needs more recognition. He is a trailblazer, he is a volleyball fanatic, and just somebody who's doing all the right things right. And this person was gracious enough to put some time aside from his busy schedule to sit down with me and have awesome conversation about where the sport is, his opinion on where the sport is heading, and gives us a little bit of insight about where he's taking his coverage this year coming up. And so with that said, I hope you guys enjoy this interview that I had with the one and only Joe McCurdy. But yeah, just kind of to break things down a little bit with kind of what we want to do with this channel. It's me and my buddy Jared. He was unfortunately unable to make it today because he has work. But
All good.
we're just trying to get the sports to grow just a little bit more in the U.S. just in terms of like just athletes kind of recognizing the growth of the game, but also like how exciting it is to watch high level volleyball. It was funny because I watched Out of Systems podcast with Ariel, and she brought up a good point, and they dropped a reel on it a couple weeks ago where she was like, "Yeah, none of these kids can name a single athlete on like our top teams."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Yeah, just thinking about it, like if I were to ask a couple of the kids that I coach, like to name a few players, they can name maybe a handful. Of course, you have your Monies and your Lexi Rodriguez and Maddie Skinner and stuff like that. But other than that, I feel like there's not too many other household names, at least relative to like other sports. So I was just that's kind of like the vision that we have for this, is to have awesome people on and kind of get to know their story too, because I think that's ultimately the thing that brings it all together, is who are these athletes outside of the floor so that you can support them when they are playing. And so when I was coming up with a list of people I wanted to have on, like not to but you were the first person on my list.
Dude,
And
I wasn't expecting that. I was like, oh no, am I the last? Am I, fifth
no,
or
like
sixth?
like like of course I was like, okay, like obviously it would be cool to have Ariel, and I see her all the time at tournaments, and Matt, like they're doing awesome stuff with Bay. But I was like, who's doing coverage the way that at least I would want to see?
Right.
And every time one of your videos comes up, I'm like, obviously there's a lot of research involved, but also like that's just at least for me, like watching NBA and stuff, I'm like, okay, I could do this for basketball and for football and stuff like that, but no one's really doing this for volleyball right now.
Yeah.
And so just to give you your props, like the stuff you're doing is awesome.
Appreciate it.
And you're, in my opinion, going to be one of the trailblazers that blazes the trail for how big this sport grows media wise in the future for sure.
Dude, that means a lot, man. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess, before we get into the Pacific stuff, I want to just ask you, like what your mission is and what kind of you want to see from your content, and
Yeah.
I guess just that.
So I guess here I'll start with my story towards this channel, I guess. So I grew up a BYU fan, and it was me and my dad. My dad's a BYU alum, so we would just watch BYU. BYU was the first volleyball team that I watched, and it was only us, me and my dad, talking back and forth about how good they were, what their projections were going to be, and same with you, seeing all the football, basketball, F1, kind of content creators on my page that are just giving their opinions. And well, I love football, I love basketball, but going to school wanting to be, a sports media broadcaster analyst, I was never really expecting to go into those sports, without it taking a really long time to get to the point where I was on ESPN, where I was, a valued voice in the space. And just like you said, I didn't notice anybody talking about volleyball, and I wanted to find places where I could talk with other people about volleyball. And it wasn't until my senior year where I was like, well, screw it, I'm gonna do it. It's not that hard. It can't be that hard. And just to have some place where I know I'm not the only one that wants to talk about volleyball, because if it was on TikTok, if it was on social media, it would be on my feed, and it just wasn't. So, I'm going to provide that to the people that are wanting the same thing as me, is, a place to share opinions, because I'm not on the message boards, I'm not on the discords, stuff like that was far past me. So I was just, TikTok, Instagram is where it's at right now, and so you know we
Yeah,
took it from there.
especially now, like you said, I can count on my hands like how many people are really covering volleyball like similarly to the way that you do. And I think that's a problem for sure, especially with how exciting the sport is. I was talking to one of my friends who shoots. I don't know if you're familiar with Jordan Poole, but he shoots Jordan Poole's photos. I met him last week actually, and he was like, yeah, like there's not too many people even at a high level, taking photos or videos of these guys. And so like I think that just goes to show how much space we have
Mhm.
to kind of grow the sport too, and kind of, I don't want to say lead the way, but have these conversations. That's the point that I want to make with my channel is like we need to have these conversations more often.
Yeah.
Because once the right person hears it or the right group of people hears it and realize how big of a sport this can actually be in the U.S., I think that's where it has to start. And also, paralleling it to overseas where volleyball is huge, right? Like the market is there.
Yeah.
The US has a bunch of sports fanatics. Like, why isn't volleyball a top sport? It's not because it's not exciting. It's just because the coverage isn't there. But what do you think? Like, why isn't volleyball where it needs to be, at least where we think it needs to be relative to overseas, I guess?
I don't know. That's a really good question. Just we it's not supported like it is overseas. Like
Mm-hmm.
you don't have. I talked to some of my friends that are in the Bundesliga, and they're just like the community. They're small. They're in small towns, but just
Mm-hmm.
that is what they do. Where that's just not our first sport in America.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
football, it's basketball, it's baseball. Those are our sports that, if there's nothing else to do, coming from a guy who lives in Syracuse, New York, football and basketball are the
Yeah.
only things people
Yeah.
care about in Syracuse.
Right.
Um, so it's just like, we're not one of the top 3 sports in America, and you're just across the board. In California, maybe like that, where you see a lot of the crowds. Nebraska
Mm-hmm.
women's volleyball, that's just Nebraska.
Right.
That's just their fan base. They will show out to anything, and the fact that Nebraska is the number 1 team and undefeated right now, it helps. But it's just not one of our sports, and
Yeah.
we're trying to get it to a point where we are 10-15 years away from actually, just with the kind of infrastructure they're putting into high school, with the amount of media coverage that we should be getting hopefully in the next couple of years. It's just we're getting there. It's a slow process. We can't expect NBA like numbers and
Yeah.
then be disappointed when we don't get that. So
That's what's crazy to me, right? Is like you said, Nebraska's the number 1 team in the country. They're undefeated. They're not just like undefeated where they're scraping by.
yeah.
They're I
What was
I
it,
have
like
no word. I have no
25
words.
sets straight, something like that?
Yeah, I have no words to describe what's happening over there. But like, how is that not being covered? The way it should be by national media. Of course, you have a couple posts here and there of like some highlights and stuff like that, or like graphics, but no one's talking about Nebraska volleyball.
Yeah.
But I guess that brings up my next question, which is like, how much of that do you think is because of lack of professional volleyball? Obviously, we have Love Volleyball, which is taking off, right? But in the U.S., at least on the men's side and a little bit on the women's side, because of the new pro league starting and stuff like that. But like NCAA, of course, is super high level, but that's the pinnacle of U.S. volleyball, right?
Right.
For the most part. How much of that do you think has to do with how much it's being covered and how much opportunity, I guess, there is for people to stay and play here?
Well, that's the thing. There isn't any, at least on the men's side, there isn't any opportunity to stay and play
Right.
here. So you got
Right.
everybody going to overseas, and your talent will come back every summer for VNL, every 4 years for an Olympics. Well, I think this year was, the most excitement we had around our USA team, even though it was a really young team this year. And maybe that's where some of the excitement came from. You
Hmm.
got guys like Cooper Robinson, straight out of college, doing really well. You
Yep.
got guys like Ethan Champlin, who was huge in college. Everybody loved him in college, and then he went off to the Bundesliga, did really well. But you got some of those core UCLA homers that you can't reach the
Right.
Bundesliga. It's just not accessible. So when he comes back, you're reminded this kid's amazing. And
Yeah.
you just kind of pick on to that, of the athletes that are more recently going out and accessible through social media. I can't really speak so much on the women's side. I love how much LOVB and the expansion on that. I would really like to see viewership go up for that. Just the amount of
Yeah.
viewers, both in person and on the broadcast, to really feel comfortable. And yes, the United States is a great spot to have professional volleyball, whether it be women's or men's.
Yeah.
I think just overall in North America, I think it'd be a really great opportunity if Canada and the U.S. kind of combine together and put together a little North American pro league, because we've got rich cultures in both Toronto and in Quebec and in
Yeah.
California. So I think that's something that we could see come in the next couple of years, hopefully. But I think it's just we're laying the groundwork right now. We're laying the
Yeah.
ideas, and like you said, we haven't seen this type of coverage before. Volleyball is starting to just slowly be recognized as kind of one of those sports, and I think we're right at the pinnacle. Well, not at the pinnacle, but right at the start of something new.
Yeah.
So
I mean, it's just funny because, like, as you're going through that, I'm like, how in my brain, I'm like, obviously we know how awesome this sport is. So it's like sometimes I'm like scratching my head, how are investors not investing in this now?
right.
But I agree, right? It's like it is the groundwork, and it's gonna be a slow burn, but I think, especially with the Olympics coming to North America in 2028, like
2028, yeah.
that, in my opinion, I think that's gonna be a huge. I mean, the sport has to take advantage of that, in my opinion, right? Because of how little coverage it gets and stuff like that. Like if
Yeah.
the sport does a good job at drawing highlights and getting to know these athletes a little bit better, I think that there's no doubt that that's going to be one of the biggest factors in growing the sport even more.
Yeah, and you look at if you look at that 2028 Olympics, it's probably going to be the last run for Matt Anderson. It'll probably be the last run for Micah Christensen. So it's just like if we can get in the next
Yeah,
2 years, 3 years, you're just in a level of excitement, towards the sport of men's volleyball. It'll be such a fun event. I
yeah.
can't wait.
Where do you think the sport goes the next 3 to 5 years, like in preparation for that? Like, what do you think that needs to happen for? I guess I'll just say us, not us, me and you, but just us as the
Yeah,
volleyball community in general needs to do to take advantage of the opportunity for it to come to the U.S.
I think I think two things. We can't let Moni Mania stop us from showing up to these volleyball games. Yes, he was
Yeah,
great. Yes, he sold out arenas, especially in college. But now that he's gone, please still show up to the games.
right.
Moni's a great way, perfect way to introduce you to the sport. The expectations of that level of play may not be where it's at, going to any other games, but still show up to the games. You've been introduced to the teams, especially for some of these smaller programs that got to play Long Beach State. So, and then secondly, we just need to get on ESPN. Like, I don't know what's keeping us from getting on ESPN. We're one of the most viral sports in America. I think just with, the level of athleticism we're seeing from these guys,
Absolutely.
and you're not getting much support from some of the athletes that grew up with volleyball, right?
Hmm.
You see Manhattan Six Man, where you've got so many, former and or current NBA talent that you're like,
Yeah,
oh my gosh, they played volleyball. You've got, with Steph Curry, his daughter plays volleyball. Like there's so many high level athletes that have, a connection with volleyball, and they just don't speak on it, and it
right.
just doesn't help us. I can name off a couple of, maybe Vince Carter has a really big, volleyball background. Dwayne Wade. I mean, a lot of these, prime 2000s basketball players, you
Yeah.
know, could be helping out the sport a lot of ways. And ESPN's number one. If we just, I can't imagine why we aren't having Sports Center top tens every other week.
Yeah.
So
Especially, yeah. I mean, I don't even remember. Maybe one of Moni's plays got clipped for a
yeah.
ESPN top 10. Like, how is that? I digress. But like,
I would
that's
see maybe two. I think
yeah,
two overall in a year where you have Moni Nikolov, two ESPN graphics posts about
yeah,
Moni, and it was somebody else's content being taken by ESPN. So it's
right.
just it's so frustrating.
I mean, I just don't get the coverage aspect. Like, who? Obviously, you would be one of the people that I would assume would want to take on that mantle. But like, there's not that many other people, in my opinion, that even are showing signs of wanting to go do those things,
Yeah.
right? And um, yeah, I think that's what's holding it back. At least here is like I said earlier, there's not. It's not very easy for an average volleyball player right now to see coverage of the game or like at least know a little bit more about the sport unless you're watching most of the matches, unless you're keeping up with scores. And that's another thing too, is it's a little bit difficult to watch the sport if you're not already invested into it, right? I think Matt brought up a good point a few months ago where it's like, how does this sport become a little bit more exciting to watch on a broadcast? There's no storyline a lot of the time because of how dominant some of these teams are,
Right.
right? And it makes it a little bit difficult to invest because for the most part, you already know who's going to win. A lot of the cases, there's less, yeah, there's no story behind some of the things sometimes until you get to the playoffs, until you get to, the national championship and things like that. Obviously, there's some teams who perform a little bit worse than we expect, but for the most part, it's a little bit hard to follow for the average volleyball player or average consumer.
Yeah. I think a lot of that, especially with, cameras and stuff, volleyball, especially with the teams that are in at least Division 1 men's volleyball, the resources. So it's like you're asking them to have multiple angles, and half the time they barely have a good replay system. So it's just like the expectations to suddenly have FIVB volleyball world level kind of equipment
Yeah,
is a
yeah,
lot. When I went
right,
to the VNL, oh my gosh, that was amazing. The game went so
right,
much quicker. You didn't have any of these stupid challenges on in or outs, like net touches. Everything was, it's expedited to a level where I'm like, wow, these games are moving. Like
yeah,
there's no arguing, there's no sort of controversy, and if we can get it to a point where it's like that, that'd be great. But it's just,
mm,
you're never going to be happy because a lot of the complaints, we can have it would say the same for a mid-major basketball team or just
right,
any really football. Like I mean, it's not specific to one sport. It's just that our sport seems to be like the most niche and has the least amount
mm,
of followers. So and it's hard to introduce to people. But it's finding those moments that, yeah, with an Olympics coming up, with Moni Nikolov, with just national championships, you take those moments. You don't have to watch the full season. We're just asking you to be a fan of one of the teams. As soon as you're a
right,
fan of one of the teams, being able to follow a specific team is a lot easier. I was introduced to BYU, when I was 12 and have been
right.
following them since. And it's really that easy. You just have to find a team.
Yeah, I think another thing that makes it a little bit tricky to follow is a lot of at least internationally, is you have to pay for certain subscriptions
Yes.
and you know if
Yes.
you're not a fan, if you're just following one player, I don't know how many people are going to want to pay a subscription to watch one player play unless they're super connected to them.
Yeah.
How do you think that plays into a role, and what do you think the solution is moving forward, I guess? Or not solution, but what do you, I guess, just what do you think on that in terms of how an average fan can keep up with people or other teams a little bit easier.
Yeah, I mean that's a struggle that I'm working on right now. So, we end the World Cup, World Championships, and then I'm like, okay, we're excited to get into overseas ball, and I do 2 or 3 videos on each of the pro leagues, and I realize that there are people out there, I find this new viewership base that know a whole lot more about the sport than I do. Or at least that I was expecting. And it's hard. It's hard. And I'm not asking anyone to, start in college. I'm not even trying, I'm not even following, you know, most of the European leagues. It's just,
Right.
it's hard.
Yeah.
It's not easy. And time zones, it's just, it's not something that I would expect unless, NCAA is easy. If you're truly following international as an American, well done for you. How do you do it? Because man, I just cannot. It was just, with stat boxes, with all of this, that, and the other. I've just found it really, really hard. I'll keep up with some of the Americans. I'll be like, okay, how's Khalil Hano doing? How's Cooper Robinson doing? But
Right.
otherwise, it goes so fast, and I can't. That's why I've given myself, you know, really since October to kind of just stop, because really since January of last year I've been doing volleyball nonstop, and I was just
Yeah.
like, World Cup's over, I'll try and follow what's going on overseas, but otherwise I'm just gonna get ready for the NCAA season. So I just
how
can't.
how much how much volleyball are you consuming on a daily basis, right? Because
Right.
like,
Right
yeah,
now it's not a lot, because there's just, I'll see Cooper Robinson's stat line on his story. I'll see a couple of his videos. I'll see, Micah Christensen won a game, and that'll be it. That's about it. Say, back a couple months ago is probably a whole lot more. Um
yeah,
but and up and coming this January, it'll be a whole lot more.
right.
But right now I'm just like, we're watching from a distance.
Right. Are you planning on coming out to any games on the West Coast this year coming up?
Yeah, so that's the thing. I haven't fully figured out my schedule. I want to make it out to the NIL tournament that
Yeah,
UCLA's hosting, either
yeah,
UCLA or Long Beach State are hosting. Otherwise I'm gonna be doing a lot of stuff up in the East Coast. I feel like the East Coast is, may not be the same level of competition that you're seeing over there in California, but there are a lot of good teams over here.
yeah,
So I've got trips planned out already for Penn State. Hawaii comes up to Penn State, and then we've got a lot of new programs with Manhattan, with Maryland Eastern Shore, with the NEC really growing right now, that I'll be able to go to a lot of their games. So we'll figure out a schedule here soon. In
yeah.
a perfect world, I will be going to a volleyball game every week for at least the first month of the season. Just
That's awesome.
being in Syracuse, I'm able to drive really everywhere, and the
Yeah,
cost of it's not that bad. So yeah, no, I'm excited.
yeah. I finally UCLA and Hawaii are coming out to Stanford. Like, obviously, I could drive down to. Well, I'm in the Bay Area, so
Okay.
or no, I'm in Sacramento right now, but I grew up in the Bay Area. So I could have watched a lot of UCLA games growing up and stuff like that, but I was never really able to.
Yeah.
But now it's like, okay, thank God, this season I can watch Hawaii and UCLA come up and face Stanford. Obviously, Stanford's program is doing awesome right now too, so it'll
Yeah.
be pretty fun game to
Well,
watch.
I mean, if we want to talk about Stanford, I was, seeing their conference schedule, or not conference, but just the overall schedule released was, I don't know. Let me know what you think. Are you a Stanford fan? Or is that your team, or
I am unaffiliated. I mean
unaffiliated?
I just like what I mean. For me, when I was in middle school, I watched a lot of UCLA,
Okay.
but because of Micah Ma and Kofi, like
Yeah.
those guys were just so electric to watch for me. And but I mean I've never really committed to a team. I guess I'm kind of just like a general volleyball fan, but
Yeah.
I do like watching Stanford. I've watched a couple of their games recently, and they're super fun to watch for sure.
Yeah. Well, their non-conference schedule, I think, is going to be really tough for a team that's got a lot of talk around them. I mean, they've got a lot of good pieces this year, and a lot of pieces that have been close, but just can't really seem to keep any sort of consistency. So if they
Mhm.
can make it through what they have as their non-conference schedule, I'll be really, really impressed with that team. So
Yeah, absolutely. I guess moving on, like I have storytelling and commentary on my list of topics I kind of wanted to go over, like kind of like what we were talking about with how the difficulty of watching a little bit, obviously, like you said, if you focus on one team, it becomes a little bit easier. But I guess in general, like, what do you think needs to happen for good storyline to be shown a little bit better or broadcasted a little bit better for the public, so more people who are not maybe as invested in volleyball can kind of find their way to the sport, whether that's on social media or YouTube and stuff like that.
yeah, I mean, I think you put that on my back. I have to put that on my back in being able to cover these stories and being able to just give content that's easy to digest, easy to, get excited about, and then,
Yeah.
have people ask questions. Be like, how do I watch this? Where do I go? What is men's volleyball? Yeah, and then we bring up all the, subscription services, but what isn't behind a paywall these days?
Hmm.
So yes, it's a pain to pay these subscriptions, but ESPN Plus is free through, the Disney Plus package. So it's just,
Right.
you know, if you really want to watch it, you'll pay for it. I really wanted to watch the VNL, and I didn't buy the Volleyball World subscription until the VNL, and I was like, yeah, this is really worth it, just being able to watch not only all of the USA games, but any other
Yeah.
game that I was like, oh, Moni Nikolov's playing Japan, let's watch that. Oh, Canada's losing again, let's watch that.
Yeah.
So it's just, a matter of being able, my part, get out these stories, be a little bit more of a journalist, a little bit more of a documentarian, and have people just, watch my content. So
Dude, that's awesome. I mean, not a lot of people want to take on that responsibility of like, you know, I have to do this thing to take this to the next level. And I think that's really commendable. And that's exactly what the sport needs, right? We need more of you to come out here and cover more, right? And it'd be so cool to have, more than a handful of people to do those things, but it's awesome that, you want to be one of the front head, people to do that. So just want to give you props one more time.
thanks, man.
That's really, really cool.
Yeah, the drive of somebody who wants a job in sports media is one that cannot be beat.
No, seriously. Exactly. And what's funny is like, like we mentioned earlier, like for me growing up watching a lot of basketball quote unquote analysts and football analysts or just random people with a following on YouTube or Instagram and stuff like that, it's like, how much do you really know?
Mm.
And obviously not everyone knows everything, but like there's some people who are like, you're able to make a living off of this and, have the following that you have. So I think, like you said, it's a slow burn, but I think ultimately, like you said, with the passion, with the drive to do this for a living and to do this like that's ultimately what's gonna push the sport further for sure.
Yeah. If you make it, they will come is something that I learned really, really quickly in this whole
Yeah.
thing. Volleyball is a really niche sport with a lot of fans, and especially with high school growing, these kids that are playing club, they want this content. They want it, they want
Right.
it, they want it. So it's like, you know, a little bit of burnout near the end of the World Championship season, but now moving forward, it's like, especially with this morning's video, I was like, I don't even know if I should make this specific video because, Matt put out a great video. I'm like, I don't know, just to give somebody more. I mean, he
Right.
gave a lot, and I was like, I can't
Yeah.
follow this up, but I'm just gonna give them something so
Right.
there's more than just one person talking about this to kind of just get.
Exactly. And there's more outreach there too, right? Obviously Matt has the following he has and stuff like that, but it's like, there might be someone who follows you that doesn't follow him. And that's why I think it's so important. Like for me, just starting things off a little bit, but like, there might be someone who watches my video with Gage that's never seen volleyball before,
Exactly.
right? Or now watching a video with you where it's like, I don't know who either of these two people are, right? But they're talking. It looks cool. It's chopped up in a way that is easily consumable, and so finding a way to reach that's ultimately my goal because I think obviously we have the fan base that we have. Volleyball has a fan base that it has, right? But to gain a little bit more support from basketball fans, from football fans, from soccer fans, right?
Yeah.
Those people are out there too that might like volleyball more than the sport they're currently watching, but never get the opportunity to hear conversations or to see the sport in a different light.
Yeah. I think it's just really fighting for respect. For, at least
Mm,
if we're talking about those types of like those athletes, we're just fighting for
yeah,
respect from those athletes because
right.
they hear men's volleyball and they just they dismiss it entirely. And so if you just go to a game,
Exactly.
if you just
Yes.
go to a game, you'll realize just how impressive these athletes are.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
it's just
Yeah. I was
it's
listening to Cam Thorne, and he was like, "Yeah, I have a 48-inch vertical." I'm like, "How many 40 or 48 or 49?" I'm like, "How many NBA players are, I'm sure they're super athletic too, obviously, but like 49 inches, 48 inches is insane,
great.
right?" And so like you said, if they come out to one game, right, come out to one college match and see how fast paced this game actually is, how hard it is to pass a float serve, right? It's like, oh, you just stick your arms out. Like, no, like this ball is moving, right? So,
Well, that's the thing. That's our problem. That's our problem. We don't
right,
float serve.
right.
We have so many teams that I don't understand their service.
That's true.
It's just
Yeah,
we're gonna miss
it's a good point.
35 serves and still win the ball game.
That's a
Loyola
good point.
Chicago, I'm talking to you. It's just it's ridiculous. I can't
Yeah,
understand how you can have at least half of your roster have multiple service errors and not go away from, hey, we're ripping the ball. We're not float serving. We're ripping the ball. I don't care how many missed serves you've had. It's ridiculous. So I think that's our biggest detriment and biggest thing to our how fast paced this game can be is we
hmm
miss so many serves. So
yeah. I mean, I was gonna ask how you think what you think the solution is there, but
you can't.
obviously that's scheme and
Yeah.
strategy, right? Like
Yeah.
ultimately it's give and take. So that's a really good point. Um Player branding, I think I touched on it a little bit earlier,
Yeah.
right? Where, we only see these athletes every once in a while. At least our top, Olympic roster and stuff like that. But I think even with college now and NIL, I'm gonna have a couple conversations with a couple of my friends who play pro or not pro ball, who play college ball, right? It's like how important do you think that is moving forward for athletes to get on social media, have conversations like this, right, where they can be their own spokespeople, and we don't have to necessarily rely on, other professional athletes to kind of take us to the next level. Of course, it would be nice, but I guess what do you think on that?
It's so important. It's so important. Like I look specifically at players that do this well because if you don't do it well, then you're. I think of Cam Thorne, who we've already talked about, and Keone
Mm-hmm.
Thim, who
Mm-hmm.
probably in my eyes have the two. I mean, Keone graduated, so it's hard to look at him anymore. But had two of some of the best just media presences, and in and of itself had so many fans coming behind them. So
Yeah.
when Keone went from Hawaii to BYU, he still had that core fan base. So if you're
Yeah.
able as an athlete to be able to have a social media presence, have an ability to grow a following, I mean, it brings the fans with you. Cam does an amazing job. I'm really impressed with his social media presence. Another person I think is Taylor Averill, who
Mm-hmm.
he does a really good job with the pro side, just being able to do his vlogs, and his is an energy that is just palpable. Taylor Averill's probably one of
Yeah.
the most energetic loving individuals in the sport of men's volleyball, and seeing his content is great. But yes, if you are in the sport of volleyball, if you are one of these teams like UCLA, even if you're on one of the smaller teams, there's a kid on my For You page from Menlo that
Yeah.
I forget his name now, but his content's been on my For You page the past couple of days, and it's been awesome. I've loved it.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, hopefully you're starting for Menlo this season, so I can keep following you. So it's just, if you create the content, if you're consistent, it will show up on people's For You pages, and people
Yeah.
will follow you. So, and especially with volleyball, we're such a small sport, lean into it. If you are, controversial, if you're, just have an energy, have a presence, it'll be easy. It'll be easy.
Yeah. And that's the thing too, is like for me, if, my favorite players were up uploading videos, even if it was like weekly or like twice a week, right? Where it's like simple content of you on your phone recording what you're doing for the day, right? Or
Yeah.
whatever, or, parts of your training or, behind the scenes stuff. Like that's the stuff that, I mean, for me, I live for. I want to see what's really going on behind the scenes. I don't know if you follow Devin Booker on Instagram, but he uploaded a really sick vlog from the Olympics, and Devin Booker barely played that entire Olympics. Like
Yeah.
he had a really important job, but like he was just capturing what was going on behind the scenes, right? And obviously he has the fan base he has, and whatever. But nonetheless, like that video was so cool because you got to see what a professional athlete lives like,
Yeah.
right? Or if a collegiate athlete did that, what does a collegiate volleyball player actually have to go through, right? You have lifting, and then you have morning practice, and then you have full team practice after, or whatever your schedule looks like, right? Like what does it take to be an athlete
I
at
think
that
we're
level playing pro
romanticizing the
volleyball?
life of an athlete a little bit, but
Yeah.
still, I think the basis is the same.
Mm-hmm.
You know, having that consistency, just it's a lot, especially in season, to be able to do that. But you look at a guy like Skylar Varga, who was maybe doing 2 or 3, especially during his time with the senior team with Canada, he was posting stuff. He was doing a great job, and with Long Beach, he's doing great. You see Moni right now. He's a Twitch streamer as well as a international superstar. So it's just like finding a
Right.
niche. It's easy, especially if you have a name right now.
Yeah.
You can only do yourself good if you
Right.
have a name. If you're in this sport, if you know that you have fans and a following, just
Yeah.
give them a little something. It's just easy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the Moni stuff is so funny. Like there's this clip channel I follow on Instagram. It's like just the most random moments, and like I consume that like,
Yeah.
you know,
That's the
no other.
most volleyball content I've consumed is Moni Nikolov's Twitch stream clips. That's
It's
as
like him
much
him
as
and Alex just
volleyball.
screaming. It's so epic.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, last thing, and then we'll get to the Pacific stuff, and then I think we'll close things out. But like, where do you, or how far are we from pro men's volleyball in the U.S., do you think?
Uh 2 years. In North America, I think if, having conversations with the people that I've had conversations with, over the last year, I know there's a lot of motivated individuals that are trying to get something like that started. Have had a lot of conversations with, some of these superstars and, Mickey Oletto and Ingapeth at the VNL. It's going to happen, whether or not the timeline of it beats me, because I'll be there to cover it. I don't know how much I can do in terms of helping it get off the floor,
Right.
but I think it can happen. I really do, and really should. So
Yeah. Uh, 2 years. That's so soon. That would be so
I
awesome.
think
And then
in 2 years, either having something pick up. I think we should have something pick up right after the Olympics. Having something ready to go, you
hmm
know, developed, ready, and launched right after the Olympics, because it could really be like, hey, Matt Anderson is back in LA for his last Olympics, and then he's going to play his last season on the California Spikers or something. It's just something like that.
yeah,
Bring in some of these high level, high talent names from these pro leagues in Europe back home, bringing everyone back
right.
home.
Yeah.
And we see the fans come out. You see all the Polish fans coming to Chicago. You see all the Brazil and Italy fans. The fans are here. The fans are
hmm
here in America. You just got to find the pockets. You got to find the pockets that we can place these teams and have one of the Polish national team players come over and play. Have Micheletto, have Gianelli, just at some point in their careers come to the U.S. because
Right.
why can't we do that? Why can't we do that?
I see almost like a parallel to soccer a little bit, right? Where internationally it's the biggest sport in the world, and then you come to the US and it's not as big, right? Obviously we have the MLS and big programs like that, but like I think we almost should take a blueprint from what they're doing right, what they're doing wrong in a sense, and like how we can capitalize on fan bases like that,
Yeah.
right? Where, like you said, if we pull a couple big names from some international teams, then that fan base comes along on this side and now becomes invested in what's happening in North America,
Yeah.
right? But yeah, I think that's super realistic. I mean, it's only a matter of time, I think,
Yeah.
right? Like it's only a matter of time for the sport to really get the recognition it deserves, and for the average person and households to know the names of
Yeah.
these awesome athletes.
And for me, it's really going to be like there's no NBA of volleyball, right?
Yeah.
You've got all of these leagues in Europe where, the Superliga, the, Bundesliga, you've got all these high level talent over there,
Mm-hmm.
but they're not all in one league. If we can
Right.
get them all in one league, then and in North America where everything runs, it's perfect. It's perfect.
Exactly. Because like even the Olympics obviously is its own thing, but it's not like you can't get a low. Let me choose my words carefully, because obviously you can get a loaded roster, but imagining like a super team where the league runs through the top 6 or top 7 best athletes, right?
Yeah.
Like just thinking about stuff like that would be so awesome to see, because then it's multinational, where you have a guy from the US or a guy from, Brazil on the same team, and then ultimately that's where storyline begins, and then controversy and all that stuff becomes electric. And that's really what sports really is about, where it's a storyline aspect and having someone to root for, having someone to despise.
Yeah.
Right. So
Look at the WNBA. Look at the
yeah,
WNBA and
yeah,
how Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark, their feud kind of just fills and
right.
fuels that league, and it's just so exciting day in and day out to see what antics are going on in the WNBA. So it's
Yeah.
just having that type of drama, because you really don't have it in volleyball. These people aren't and that's where the yellow cards and the talking back and forth in between the net, we need to kind of let that go, because that's what's fun.
I
you
would
know
love that.
that's what's fun.
If you're
So
just able to scream across the net, I just
you got to
it'd be so.
appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just more, the more clips the better, right? Like there's, whether it's bad or good, like as much as there's sometimes where I hate, when certain athletes are getting into it and stuff like that, but also that brings in attention, and that brings
Really.
in, the publicity, which is ultimately good for whatever sport has it.
Yeah.
Yeah, what do you have moving forward, man? Like what's going, obviously you have the NCAA coming up and stuff like that, but like what's on the agenda for you this year coming up?
So yeah, it's really that. It's really volleyball, because that's really all I do now. So I mean, I graduate college with a degree in media studies, and now I'm a freelance volleyball journalist, and just doing the sweat equity to try and get myself, because right now, you know, there's no job title for me in volleyball. There's no
Right.
really career path that I can rely on solely as my main source of income with
Mm-hmm.
volleyball. So right now it's giving myself this year or this season to see what I can do. See, I'm working, of course, keeping up with the short form content on TikTok, on Instagram, but also seeing what I can do on YouTube with a little bit more long form stuff. I love talking about volleyball, and the individual, like top 5 freshmen, top 5, giving deep dives into these teams
Right. Yeah.
can be a really fun source that I wasn't able to tap into first year around. And then it's if USAV, if First Point, if one of these companies, if MPSF, Meva, Big West, want to bring me on as a consultant, as a as their media person, that's great. I love that. If not, then we're gonna have to go in a different direction. I got
Yeah.
into this to be a coach. I wanted to coach. I was the data volley specialist at the University of Tulsa for 2 years, and I started this channel to give myself some sort of up when
Right.
when going to grad schools, and being a person that knows volleyball and is just around volleyball and watches volleyball and is just in the sport, to be in the sport. And while it's taken the direction of journalism right now, Hopefully there's a world where I can take it to coaching. But until then, right now it's just really just making sure that I can put out the best amount of content, high quality, both commentary and highlights that I can this upcoming season. And we'll see where it goes from there. I'm playing it day by day.
Dude, that's awesome, dude. Like, I can't express this enough that like you are doing all the things right now, and obviously have the vision. And with how unsaturated this market is for what you're doing, like there's no way it doesn't work out as long
Yeah.
as you just keep going through with it. Man, that's super awesome. Before we close things out, dude, let's go over this Pacific thing. Like, what does this do for the sport? What does this do for NCAA? Yeah.
It's interesting to talk because obviously this just happened this morning, and how
Hmm.
much does it really push the agenda? I'm not sure, but in a
Hmm.
time where, especially after watching Matt's video on this morning, in a time where Grand Canyon just cut their program, St.
Right.
Francis, or not St. Francis, Grand Canyon just cut their program, and you're in this uncertain world where is volleyball a liable sport to get into? And you know it is, and it should be. And while adding Pacific to an MPSF that now has Menlo, that now has Vanguard, that now has both UC Merced and Jessup coming in this season, you know where can we add in some of those big time programs? Where
Hmm.
can we add in a Big Ten conference? Because we've got Penn State, UCLA, USC. Bring in Arizona State. Like we gotta get, Grand Canyon be damned. Arizona is one of the hotbeds for, volleyball right now.
Yeah.
It's just plain and simple. Get something going in Nebraska. I don't know if we'll have the men's talent out there, but we, the fans are there apparently. Um, so it's just, little by little, celebrating the small victories in these programs, either being made or being brought back. But until we see some big names like the Arizona States, like the Michigans, like the Nebraskas making men's volleyball teams, we'll see how far we can really go. There's the money for it. You have to deal with Title IX and all that, but
Yep.
there should be so many opportunities to, just get into the heads of some of these athletic directors and be like,
Right.
look at what we can offer you. So
Yeah. It's a lot. We can offer a lot. We, as in volleyball. Volleyball can offer a lot to whatever program, whatever university, in my opinion. Like, that's my hope in terms of, getting that recognition for this sport. And I know we share that same hope and belief that it will.
yeah.
Um, Especially these next couple of years, and I'm super excited to see what you have to what you're offering currently, and what you're going to offer in the future in terms of your coverage and whatever avenue you decide to go into. I think people should tap in early to see what you're doing, because there's no doubt in my mind, just seeing the stuff that you're putting out, and obviously how much passion you have for the sport, and the skill sets that you have, right? There's no way that it doesn't work out for you, in my opinion. So
Thank you, man.
really appreciate your time, dude. Like, this is so awesome.
No, dude, this is great. I, appreciate that I was on the top of your list in terms of people you wanted to have a conversation with. I really, thank you for all the kind words. Hopefully, we look back on this 5 years from now and be like, man, this was the start of something great. So I really, what you're doing right now, keep on working on it. I know you've got a lot of, exciting interviews coming up, and glad that I could be the one to follow up Gage. So
Dude, really, really appreciate it, dude. This was awesome, man.
thank you, man. Take it easy.
You too, dude. Thank you.